Teresa Bullard, and I'm going to be talking about alchemizing your thinking. Alchemizing means transforming. How can we transform our thinking? And what I really want to focus on is the paradigm that we have, this construct that we have as a mental framework of concepts and perceptions, the way we're perceiving. What you believe is what you see. And so we have been trained and conditioned and led into a certain way of believing and perceiving and thinking in our world. And yet that paradigm, that old paradigm that we have built so much of our lives upon and our society upon, is not working anymore. And the evidence that we have that it's not working anymore is that everything in our kind of business as usual world is crumbling right now. It's just everything is kind of going into this rapid, chaotic dissolution or dissolving of these old structures. And as that happens, people are kind of wondering, like, what is going on and what can we do about this? And we see that this doesn't work, but what is going to work? And how can we shift? And so as I have explored through the science and through the consciousness studies and then also come into the alchemy and the process of how we can transform and the pattern, the steps that we go through in that process of transforming. First, we want to take a look at how did we get where we are now? What is the system, the structure that we've really been influenced by that is still influencing us today, even though it's been outdated? So what has influenced our ways of thinking? Now, you can go back through various periods of history and different epochs, and you can see that there were dominant theories or dominant philosophies that were really kind of ingrained into the culture of that time. And as those dominant philosophies shifted, then there would be kind of a whole restructuring that would happen. But the innovation, the new technologies, the new sort of insights that would come through were always kind of funneling around whatever the dominant philosophy was at the time. So we had, for example, I'm going to just kind of come from more recent times about what's really currently still in place today. Because we could go all the way back to caveman times and talk about that evolution of consciousness. But we're going to start with just what's still in place today. Like, we are still operating upon a mindset that really got established during the industrial age. And from that industrial age, it was a very mechanical way of thinking. Everything was this idea of, like, we can make it really practical, it's very materialistic, it's very mechanical, we can calculate everything out and control it. And we can engineer things exactly the way we want it, and then it'll work like clockwork, right? So many things in the industrial age went through this process, and it was very materialistic, very mechanically oriented. And then we emerged, or moved forward, and kind of, I'm going to jump now to the space age. In the space age, we started to get a little bit beyond the limitations of space, right? Before, in the industrial age, we were very limited in space and time, and prior to that, we were very limited in space and time. But space age, all of a sudden, launched us into this whole new way of being able to kind of get beyond some of those space limitations, but we still had time limitations. The other thing is things started to become more automated. It wasn't just sweat equity and hard work by manual labor anymore. We started to automate things. We started to get a little bit more. Of the automation and robotics and machinery kind of doing the work for us. But it's still mechanically oriented. And then we come to today, where we've got our digital age. And in the digital age, everything is becoming automated. Everything is becoming really quick. And it's, the value system is less and less on the mechanical skill base and more on the information skill base and on technology skill base. And in the digital age, not only are we kind of not limited by space anymore, we're now not limited by time anymore, because you get this instant access to things, instant access to information, and everything's automated. And we have the virtual connections as well. And then we have social networks. So everything is becoming far more interconnected, right? So with this, here's kind of a then. the industrial age, very mechanical, very fueled by the work and effort and sweat and labor of the people, very limited. The space age, just a few fun pictures there. And then now. And business deals happening over the computer, kids being raised on computers, and a lot of like stimulation, visual, fast stimulation, and we're totally hooked up with our cell phone and our iPad and our computer, our everything. And so everything is becoming very, very hooked up, very interconnected. This is a global network now. And so we are more and more becoming aware of, the space age really helped us see we are one planet, right? All of a sudden we didn't just have the landlocked view and just our immediate environment. All of a sudden we saw the whole. We saw the Earth. And that was a big, huge quantum leap in our consciousness, that we started to think more globally and more like, wow, that's our little planet down there, and we got to start taking care of it. So there was an effort, and now we're still trying to learn how to master that effort, but the effort was there. And now with this, not only are we seeing the planet as a whole, like people are connected. I mean, you're making friends now on the other side of the world that you've never met in person, and yet there's these deep and meaningful connections that can be made through the internet. So it's an amazing thing. And yet, what has come of all of this? The internet is now an integral part of education, an integral part of work, an integral part of our lives. How many of you feel a little too swamped with emails? How many of you feel like you want more email? Okay. Only some of you raise your hands there. How many of you just feel like you're barely keeping up with all of the information, all the things you need to do, all the. Okay. And so it's like becoming this race against the clock. Like we are feeling compressed in time. There's not enough time in the day anymore to get through all the things that are constantly coming at us. And the younger generations who grew up with this are having an easier time with it because their minds are working in a very different way. But for the older generations, they're like having to adjust and adapt and stretch and, no, I don't want a cell phone. No, I don't want to get on the computer. No, why would I be on Facebook? So, well, you better, because the world is passing you by if you don't, very quickly. Things are speeding up. So we really are, like, time is becoming compressed, and so much more is happening. And just, I can't even remember what I did last week. So much has happened in a week. And it used to be like, a year, you'd have, a couple of big events or whatever, but you'd remember the timeline and the sequence. And now, everything happens so fast and so intensely, and there's so many big events that are happening, like, just think since January. Like, world events are huge, and they're acceleratingly, happening at a rapid, rapid pace. So there's this race against the clock. Like, we are constantly trying to keep up right now, and at the same time as we're constantly trying to just barely keep up with the pace as it is, then the next year it gets faster. How many of you guys feel that? How many of you, think I'm full of shit right now? Yeah? We'll talk later. So what has this led to? What is this? I want to hear from you. Like, what kind of sense does this make you feel? Like, what does this cause in your life? This anxiety, stress, overwhelm, urgency. We can't feel. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, we're so caught up in the mind and bombarded by all this information, just trying to deal that we can't even get into here, into the deeper parts of ourselves, unless we unplug. And then if you unplug, I do this sometimes. I'll go off for a weekend and I won't check my email the whole weekend because I'm doing something else. I'm present with where I am. And then I get back after that weekend and I'm like, oh my God, I've got 300 emails to go through. And then all of a sudden I got to catch up again. So even when we unplug, it's still kind of crazy. At some point you got to catch up with yourself. So this is leading to overwhelm, the stress, the uncertainty, because we don't know where things are going. There's fear, there's anxiety, there's distraction, there's depression, reactivity, struggle, and all of this leads to dropping balls. So, can we deal with all this?
Yes.
Can we?
Only with your help.
With my help? 99% of your enlightenment comes from your own work and what you do. But I want to give you a few keys. I want to give you some tips that will help you then put them into application. So to me, the bigger question is not can we, but how. How do we do this? And this is where, a lot of people have been talking about all of this, and there's ideas and there's methods and there's all these different options out there, but even that, all the options and trying to find what's right, even that becomes overwhelming and adds to the overload and the stress. So let's just synthesize this. And when it comes to the how can we deal with this fast pace of life? It really comes down to one thing. We need a fundamental shift in the way we are interacting and perceiving and dealing with all the information in the world. And so that is going to require that we let our brains out of the box, that we really take a quantum leap, that we go through a paradigm shift. And so I want to explore a bit about what is this box that we've been trying to stick our consciousness and our way of perceiving and thinking